The alien warlord never felt weak, until he looked into her eyes. Frost and fire. Captain Nalera Vexed stood motionless on the command bridge of the Silverine warship Tempest, her crystalline exoskeleton refracting the starlight into prismatic patterns across the polished deck. The 4 spiral antennae atop her head, evolutionary sensors that allowed her species to detect electromagnetic fluctuations across vast distances, twitched imperceptibly as she monitored the approaching transport vessel. "Diplomatic necessity," she murmured, her voice like wind through ice caves. The Treaty of Altair had mandated exchange of personnel between Silverine and human forces. For 2 full stellar cycles, she would host a human engineer aboard her vessel, an arrangement she considered beneath her station. "Captain," her second-in-command Trivax approached with appropriate deference, "the human shuttle has docked. Shall I escort the visitor to you?" "No," Nalera replied, her bioluminescent markings pulsing a cool blue. "Have them report to engineering. I'll inspect our guest when more pressing matters have been addressed." 3 rotations later, Nalera finally descended to the engineering deck, partly from obligation, partly from curiosity. In her distinguished career, she had subjugated the rebellious colonies of the Helix Cluster, outmaneuvered the dreaded Scorch fleet of the Outer Rim, and negotiated surrender terms that made admirals tremble. Yet she had never spent significant time with a human. The engineering bay doors parted silently, revealing a scene of organized chaos. Equipment parts were arranged in precise patterns across workstations, and in the center stood a figure considerably shorter and less imposing than any Silverine warrior. Lieutenant Finn Durek, according to his transfer file, was half buried in an open access panel of the quantum resonance drive, humming some unfamiliar melody. "Human," she commanded, "you will stand at attention when addressing your superior officer." Finn extracted himself from the machinery, wiping his hands on a cloth. His eyes, only 2, a biological limitation Nalera had always found inefficient, widened momentarily before he offered a casual salute. "Captain Vex, right? Your propulsion system is absolutely brilliant. I've never seen crystal lattice technology integrated so seamlessly with quantum displacement drives." His voice held no fear, only professional enthusiasm. Nalera circled him slowly, the clicking of her crystalline appendages against the floor echoing in the chamber. "You will address me as captain. You will maintain proper protocol. You will complete your assigned tasks without disrupting my ship's operations. Is that clear?" Finn nodded, seemingly unfazed by her intimidation tactics. "Crystal clear, Captain. I was just admiring your ship. The Silverine approach to engineering is fascinating. Elegant but precise in its efficiency. Rather like you, I'd imagine." Her bioluminescent patterns flashed briefly crimson, a physiological response she hadn't experienced since her early training years. "You compare me to machinery." "It's a compliment," Finn said, turning back to the drive panel. "Both are powerful, sophisticated, and honestly impressive to behold." Nalera felt warmth rise to her facial plates, an alien sensation she hadn't experienced in decades of military service. "I could have you confined to quarters for such insolence." "You could," Finn agreed, selecting a tool with careful precision. "But then you'd lose the best quantum engineer in 3 systems, and your efficiency ratings would drop by at least 14%. For the first time in her command, Nalera found herself momentarily speechless. She turned abruptly, her normally azure markings flushing an uncharacteristic violet. "Complete your diagnostics by next rotation. I expect a full report." Later, alone in her quarters, Nalera caught her reflection in the polished surface of her tactical display. The violet hue still tinted her normally cool blue bioluminescence. She touched her facial plates with a crystalline hand, feeling unusual warmth. "Ridiculous," she muttered, but couldn't help replaying the human's words in her mind. No one had spoken to her with such casual disregard for her reputation in longer than she could remember. It was infuriating. It was refreshing. Nalera straightened her command insignia and pushed the thought away. She had a warship to run, One presumptuous human would not distract her from duty, no matter how unsettlingly direct his gaze had been. 4 ship cycles passed since the human's arrival, and Captain Nalera found herself inventing increasingly tenuous reasons to visit engineering. Today, she claimed a need to inspect the quantum stabilizer calibrations, reports she could easily access from her command center. Captain Finn greeted her without looking up from the resonance amplifier he was adjusting. "Third visit this week. People might start thinking you're interested in engineering." "I am interested in the optimal function of my vessel," she replied stiffly, her secondary sensory filaments undulating in what her species recognized as mild agitation. "Of course." His knowing smile provoked her, or perhaps what provoked her was how it didn't provoke her enough. Nalera observed his hands, so different from her own 6-digited crystalline appendages. His were soft, seemingly vulnerable, yet moved with remarkable precision through the complex machinery. "The phase harmonizer is misaligned," she noted, moving closer. "Good eye," Finn said, reaching for a calibration tool. Their hands brushed briefly, sending an unexpected energy surge through her neural network. She withdrew sharply. "Your thermal regulation is inefficient," she said, masking her reaction. "Humans operate at wasteful temperatures." "We run hot," he agreed with another smile. "It's part of our charm." Before she could formulate a suitably dismissive response, the ship lurched violently. Red alert signals pulsed throughout engineering. Micrometeoroid collision, Nalera assessed immediately, her warrior instincts taking over. Section 7 breach likely. Finn was already moving, grabbing an emergency repair kit. The crystal matrix for the shield generators runs through that section. If it's compromised. Catastrophic shield failure, she finished. They raced through corridors, crew members flattening themselves against walls as their captain sprinted past. When they reached the damaged section, emergency containment fields were already active, but the crystal matrix was fracturing rapidly. "Manual override required," Nalera said, assessing the damage. "But the radiation levels." Finn was already pulling on a protective suit. "My species has slightly better radiation tolerance than yours in short bursts." "I've got this." "That is incorrect. Silverine warriors can withstand." "With respect, Captain, I've read the comparative physiology reports. Your crystalline structure may deflect energy weapons, but it doesn't handle gamma radiation well." No one interrupted her, ever. Yet before she could reprimand him, Finn had slipped through the emergency field. Nalera watched tensely as he worked, his movements efficient despite the danger. When the crystal matrix stabilized, relief flooded her system, an emotion she rarely permitted herself in crisis situations. When Finn emerged, his face was flushed from exertion, sweat dampening his hair. Something about his disheveled appearance sent another unfamiliar sensation through her neural pathways. "Crisis averted," he reported, removing the protective helmet. "Though I'll need to implement a more permanent fix once the radiation levels drop." "You acted without authorization," she said, but her usual steel was missing from her voice. "I acted to save the ship," he countered, standing unexpectedly close. "Your ship, Captain." Later in her private chambers, Nalera reviewed the incident report, but found her thoughts continually drifting to the human. His quick thinking, his disregard for protocol, the strange warmth he radiated that seemed to penetrate her crystalline exterior and reach something long dormant within. "This is tactically unsound," she whispered to herself, closing the report. Yet for the first time in her decorated military career, Captain Nalera Vex found herself contemplating something beyond tactics and strategy. She touched her facial plates again, feeling that now familiar warmth in her bioluminescent patterns, and did not immediately dismiss it as weakness. The diplomatic summit on Altair Station loomed over Nalera's schedule like an approaching storm. As the highest-ranking Silverine officer in the quadrant, her presence was required, as was a technical advisor familiar with both species systems, which was how Captain Nalera found herself in a private shuttle with Lieutenant Finn Durek, acutely aware of his presence in the confined space. You seem tense, Captain, Finn observed as stars streaked past the viewports. Not a fan of diplomatic functions. I prefer direct action to political maneuvering, she replied, her crystalline digits tapping rhythmically against her armrest. Words are often deployed to disguise intentions. Not always, he said. Sometimes words reveal what actions can't. She turned to find him studying her, with an intensity that would have earned any Silverine officer a swift reprimand. On him, it stirred something else entirely. The summit proved as tedious as anticipated. Nelara endured hours of negotiations, her patience wearing thinner with each passing moment. The only respite came when technical specifications were discussed, and Finn spoke with an authority that commanded respect from both species. Your engineer is surprisingly competent. Admiral Zenith, a fellow Silverine, commented during a recess. Though he shows you insufficient deference, shall I have him disciplined? That won't be necessary, Nelara said quickly. Humans have different protocols. His technical expertise compensates for his cultural deficiencies. When the day's sessions finally concluded, Nelara retreated to her assigned quarters, only to find Finn waiting outside her door. The integrated communication systems are malfunctioning, he explained. All the diplomatic quarters are affected. Should take about 20 minutes to fix. She gestured him inside with a curt nod, watching as he accessed the room's control panel. His proximity was distracting. You defended my ideas today, he said as he worked, when Admiral Zenith dismissed the adaptive shielding proposal. Your proposal was tactically sound. His objections were politically motivated. Still, Finn glanced over his shoulder. Thank you. The sincerity in his voice disturbed her equilibrium more than any gravitational anomaly ever had. Your gratitude is unnecessary, she said, moving closer to observe his work. I merely. He turned suddenly, and they were standing mere centimeters apart. Nelara could feel the heat radiating from his skin, could detect the subtle electromagnetic patterns emanating from his nervous system with perfect clarity. Merely what? He asked softly. What happened next defied all her tactical training. Later, she wouldn't be able to determine who moved first, only that suddenly his lips were pressed against her facial plates in the strange human gesture she'd only read about in xenobiology texts. The reality was nothing like the clinical descriptions. Heat seemed to cascade through her entire neural network, her bioluminescence flashing brilliant violet as his hands tentatively touched her face. When they finally separated, Nelara felt fundamentally altered on a molecular level. That was, she began, struggling for appropriate terminology. Something I've been thinking about for weeks, Finn admitted, his pulse visibly elevated in the vessels of his neck. Court-martial offense. Several, she agreed, her voice uncharacteristically soft. But we are not currently aboard my vessel. His smile then, part relief, part desire, broke through the last of her carefully constructed defenses. For the first time in her military career, Captain Nelara Vex surrendered. Stars collide. The weeks following the Altair summit transformed Nelara's precisely ordered existence into something both chaotic and exhilarating. Their relationship remained hidden, her quarters shielded from surveillance as befitted her rank. But in private, she discovered facets of herself previously unknown. You're glowing, Finn observed one night, tracing the luminescent patterns that rippled across her crystalline form. In the darkness of her quarters, her bioluminescence cast soft violet light across his features. A physiological response, she replied, but without her usual clinical detachment. The truth was more complex. Silverine warriors were taught from emergence that emotional displays were tactical vulnerabilities. Yet here, with him, she allowed herself this small surrender. Morning cycle brought reality crashing back. A priority transmission from Silverine High Command appeared on her private terminal. Intelligence reports indicate human factions are developing anti-crystalline weaponry, announced Admiral Zenith's stern visage. Exercise heightened vigilance with your exchange personnel. Detailed briefing to follow. Nelara's antennae stiffened. She had just shared her quarters. And more, with the very species now suspected of developing weapons specifically designed to shatter her people. When she entered the bridge, her bioluminescence had returned to its customary cool blue. Lieutenant Durek is to be restricted from all sensitive systems, she ordered Trevax. Effective immediately. May I inquire as to the reason, Captain? Her second-in-command asked, antennae twitching in confusion. You may not. Hours later, Finn cornered her in an empty corridor. Want to tell me why I've been locked out of systems I've been maintaining for weeks? Security protocol, she replied, not meeting his gaze. That's not an answer, Nulara. The use of her name, never spoken on duty, made her antennae quiver. Last night you trusted me with everything. What changed? For a moment, she considered telling him about the intelligence report, searching his reactions for deception. But her tactical training prevailed. Return to your assigned tasks, Lieutenant. That's an order. His expression hardened. Yes, Captain. 3 days of frigid silence followed. Nulara threw herself into reviewing intelligence reports, searching for conclusive evidence of human betrayal, or hopefully, proof that the intelligence was flawed. She found neither, only vague allusions to research facilities and theoretical weapons applications. On the 4th day, as the Tempest approached the contested Vega neutral zone for patrol duty, Commander Trevax approached her private quarters. Captain, forgive the intrusion, but I believe there's something you should know about Lieutenant Durek. Nalara's antennae stiffened. Proceed. He's been making unusual requests to access our communications array. When denied, he attempted to use an emergency override code. So it was true. The human was a spy. The sharp pain this realization caused surprised her. Another emotional weakness she would need to excise. Bring him to the detention level. I will interrogate him personally. When Finn was brought before her in the ship's secure interrogation chamber, his face showed not guilt but anger. Is this how Silverine usually treat their allies, or is it special treatment for those who get too close? You attempted unauthorized access to restricted communication systems, she stated coldly, her bioluminescence pulsing with controlled fury. Explain yourself. I was trying to contact Earth Command, he admitted without hesitation. Something's wrong. The usual diplomatic channels have gone silent, and I needed to know why. And I'm to believe this had nothing to do with transmitting classified Silverine technical data. His eyes widened. Is that what this is about? You think I'm some kind of spy? He laughed bitterly. I guess last night meant less than I thought. Before she could respond, the ship lurched violently. The emergency alert system activated, bathing the room in pulsating red light. We are under attack, announced the ship's automated system. Unknown vessel. Shield integrity at 70%. Forgetting protocol, Nulara released Finn's restraints. Stay here, she ordered, rushing toward the bridge. Not a chance, he replied, following close behind. The bridge was in controlled chaos when they arrived. On the main view screen, a sleek vessel of unfamiliar design fired repeated energy bursts at the Tempest. Configuration unknown, reported the tactical officer. Weapons signatures don't match any known registry. Shields at 53%, announced another crew member. They're targeting our crystal matrix nodes specifically. Nalara's antennae vibrated with alarm. Whoever these attackers were, they knew exactly where to hit a Silverine vessel. Return fire, evasive pattern Delta 6, she ordered. The Tempest responded, energy beams lancing out at the attacker, but the mysterious vessel seemed to anticipate their maneuvers, slipping away from the most damaging hits. Captain, Finn spoke quietly beside her, those aren't human attack patterns. I know, she replied, equally quiet. Her tactical assessment had already confirmed it, though part of her had feared otherwise. Another hit rocked the ship. Crystal matrix destabilizing, reported engineering. Primary node failing. If that node goes, we lose shields completely, Finn muttered. Nulara made a swift decision. Lieutenant Durek, report to engineering. Do whatever is necessary to stabilize that matrix. He hesitated only a moment. Yes, Captain. As he left, she turned to communications. Broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Nilera Vex of the Silverine vessel Tempest. Identify yourselves immediately. The view screen flickered, and a face appeared. Neither human nor Silverine, but Raxian, a species known for selling their services to the highest bidder. Captain Vex, the Raxian commander, smiled, revealing pointed teeth. How fortunate. Our employer will pay extra for such a prestigious target. Who is your employer? She demanded. Someone who benefits from conflict between humans and Silverine. Someone who provided us with the exact specifications of your ship's vulnerabilities. A third party, attempting to sabotage the Alliance. The realization sent waves of cold fury through Nilara's neural network. Another violent impact shook the bridge. Crystal matrix critical, came the report from engineering. Attempting emergency stabilization. Finn. He was down there, trying to save her ship. Deploy all remaining torpedo countermeasures, Nilara ordered. Target their weapons array and prepare for emergency quantum jump. Captain, interrupted communications. We're receiving a transmission from Lieutenant Durek. Put him through. Finn's voice came through, strained with effort. Captain, I've identified the problem. The attack isn't just physical. They've introduced a viral code into our crystal matrix. It's destabilizing the crystalline structure from within.